take part two. So, I have a postgraduate diploma in psychology. I have an honours degree in psychology. I was part of a master's program, which in Australia we call the 4+2 program. This is a means of training specialists to understand bureaucracies and particular problems to be useful in their role. Think of it like this. You send someone to a school to get a pilot's license. That pilot's license allows them to fly, aircraft in general. You put them in the seat of a 747, they're fucking clueless. They have no idea what they're doing. You can't teach people to run systems and bureaucracies, which is the job of a psychologist who is a social scientist with authority over mental health, over people, who's able to put them into diagnostic categories so the system can make sense of them. Very different job to a nurse, right? You cannot just put that person through a university and expect them to be able to operate that bureaucracy and to understand what that bureaucracy requires of them. Right? Certainly not in a cost-effective way. So what the 4+2 offers, it offers this ability for junior psychs to be apprenticed into an industry where they get to learn how the different levers of the bureaucracy operate, because that's what you're doing when you provide someone a diagnosis, a statistical category for that bureaucracy to understand their needs, to provide funding for them, for you to be able to tell government officials what to do with that person, to be able to ensure that person's needs are met, to be able to coordinate their supports, to be able to ensure that that person ends up in a better place from where they started to when they ended up. This is a different role to a counsellor or a nurse who's there to provide a caring service. And it's, if I'm honest, structurally in Australia, and this is something I'm going to have to make in a different video, the way that we use psychologists is not cost effective. You've spent all this time developing these reasonably bright people into people who have the skills to be able to put people into statistical categories, to understand statistics and research methods, and you're going to have them just doing counseling. It's like, what are you doing? Stop that. The job of a psychologist is to put someone in a statistical category so the bureaucracy understands how they can have their needs met. Your job is to have authority and to use it responsibly. Now, that is what I'm able to do that Mr. Bond, Mr. Stone, whatever I fucking called him, can't do. And because he's never had that authority to begin with. So he doesn't even know what the job is. He hasn't worked in the NDIS. And remember, I started at the bottom with that. I started with people who were coming off amphetamines. I've had to talk down people with knives. I've had to deal with broken systems and learn how to operate them. So, getting back to the airplane metaphor, Mr. Stone isn't even a glider pilot in his world, right? And remember, I actually have quite a lot of respect for Mr. Stone in a lot of ways. I just wish he didn't have to inhabit this bullshit fucking classist structured world that he does, right? If he wasn't inhabiting this, him and I would get along fine. But because he does, and because people in psychology do, because it's such a pretentious middle class fucking profession, right? I have to constantly deal with these problems. They're not from Georgie's world. These people are not pragmatic. They're caught up with all this social bullshit. No, your job is to serve the community. Get your ego, crunch it up, toss it out. Do your fucking job. Getting back to the story, right? So I come from that. I end up in these positions where I'm able to be an NDIS counselor, a positive behavior support practitioner while completing my psychology certification, and also working directly as a junior psychologist with direction from a person with a PhD in clinical psychology who I spend hours with discussing my cases, who's responsible for my certification process, who is reading all my reports, signing off on them, and then sending them to the National Disability Insurance Scheme office. Mr. Stone, you've never had this and you couldn't do it. You cannot pull these different levers of power as I have learned how to do, because that's my job. I learn how bureaucracies function. I use my authority as a junior psych or a positive behavior support practitioner, whatever I can legally do at that time. Having learned the process of this complex bureaucracy, I pull the levers and get outcomes for participants, right? Whilst being trained by those people who have done their PhDs or a certification process as a provisional psychologist provider, someone who's called a board certified supervisor. You do not understand this scheme. You're not even part of this world, right? And again, I wouldn't be talking like this if I didn't have to communicate in your world, because your world is bullshit. Now, the person I am now, skill-wise, is so much more than I was 3 years ago, because I have spent time being mentored and trained by these senior psychologists who respect me, who have trained me, who actually ask me for advice as often as they give me advice. I'm in this position because I have come from a background where I'm able to give people boots on the ground opinions about complex cases and different groups of people, very vulnerable people, people from underclass backgrounds and disadvantaged backgrounds that you can't even fucking comprehend because you're so caught up in this petty bullshit and you have all these different layers of society that you see it in. You can't relate to these people. You cannot do my job. And the worst thing is that because of the structure of the NDIS, right? Well, there isn't anyone else doing this work. Not just because they can't do it, because most psychologists are these privileged middle-class fuckwits who can't relate to this underclass people, but because they're priced out of it. That's the people paying for the service. The person you're going to get if you are on the NDIS is not going to be a fancy clinical psychologist with a PhD or some chosen blessed person who sucked up to the university bureaucracy to get into a clinical master's. It's going to be me, right? It's going to be some person who's working from the bottom to the top, who comes from an underclass background, who's able to relate to disability and what it is like to have social forces keeping you down and making your life bloody well miserable, potentially. And you need someone like me who understands that population, who's worked with that population, who understands the bureaucracy, who is able to advocate for your behalf in this system. You don't need a Mr. Stone, some lofty up there guy coming down to you from his world of his fancy university degrees. He can't do my job. He does not understand my job. What you need is someone like me who is a person who's done the work at the bottom, the middle, and now the top. I take clinical instruction from very smart, incredibly qualified people. I have been working within a very structured qualification program. But little bitches like Mr. Stone, they got a hierarchy and an ego to maintain. And it all comes back to that. It comes back to ego. And I'm sorry, in your world I beat you, but in my world we're equals. And I wish you just fucking stopped it.